All right, it is time for our news update. Contributing editor Paul Crookston here. Stephen, what are we talking about this week? I'm thinking it's the assault weapons ban.
Yeah, sort of a surprise move this week after initially announcing they were going to push this vote to after the August recess, so which would have been probably about 2 weeks from this point. They made a big reversal. They broke up the package that they had tried to put together with this assault weapons ban, and instead just went straight to the floor with just the ban. It had been paired with this police funding bill that moderates wanted to get through, but was ultimately blocked, at least for now, by the Progressive Caucus and the Congressional Black Caucus, who didn't like some of the language in the bill. They wanted more, I guess, robust provisions for police accountability to go along with this funding. And that basically held up that part of the deal. And it turned out that the moderate Democrats, I guess they just got rolled. There's a promise that they'll continue on that part of this deal, but it's just a promise at this point. So instead, the bill suddenly Friday went to a vote and passed. It passed by the thinnest margins. It was 217 votes for, 213 against, one non-vote. Republican didn't vote. I'm not sure who that is actually, but you had 5 Democrats cross over to vote against the bill, and which meant they needed at least one Republican to vote for it in order for it to pass, because it needed to get at least 216 votes, given that everyone was voting. And they got 2 Republicans. So they got Fitzpatrick from Pennsylvania and Jacobs from New York, this is his big hurrah vote. He said he was coming out for this ban on sales, and that got so much backlash in his district that he's now retiring, but he did end up voting and was a key vote to make this happen. Now, to be clear, this is just the House of Representatives. It is a big deal because this is the first time they've passed an assault weapons ban since the first one, the 1994 assault weapons ban, which expired in 2004. No House has actually voted on an assault weapons ban since then. And this is the first time it's passed by the thinnest of margins. It's a thinner margin than what the other gun control package passed by. The lowest one there, they actually kind of duplicated part of that package because the last month's gun control package that the House passed had a magazine ban in it. And so does this assault weapons ban. So Congress has been, at least when it comes to guns lately, they've been really into just redundancy. They've been passing things that are either already law. For instance, they created a new crime for straw purchases, even though there's already a crime for straw purchases. So they've done a number of these things, and now the House has passed 2 separate, though I believe completely identical, magazine bans. But the previous magazine ban got 220 votes, which was the lowest of any of those proposals as well. But now this new assault weapons ban got 217. And it will move to the Senate, where probably nothing will happen, to be honest with you.
Yeah, it's not like it'll lose. It probably just won't go anywhere, right?
It probably won't get a vote. That would be my guess. It could get a vote. It's not impossible. Schumer could bring it to the floor. The schedule is super packed on the Senate. It's packed on the House side too. They only have, probably another 20 days of actual legislating until the midterms, maybe a little more than that. The August recess, they're going to come back early from that to finish some other work. Maybe they'll, there's probably opportunity to do something during that time. But either way, even if they do find the time, there's just not the support by a long shot in the Senate, because you'd need 60 votes first off, and you're not going to get 10 Republican votes. You probably aren't going to get a single Republican vote. There isn't Republican senator who has come out in support of this policy. And then there are a number of Democrats who are unlikely to vote for it as well.
Yeah, it's not like all 50 Democratic senators are co-sponsoring this, right?
No, there's only 37 co-sponsors. Now, you'd probably get more who would vote for it, just like this House bill had. It was about 210 people who could actually vote on it were co-sponsors, and it ended up with about 217 votes. So, there's 37 co-sponsors on the Senate version of this bill. You maybe could get to 45 if you really tried hard. I don't know, maybe more. It's hard to say exactly, but there have been multiple Democratic senators, including John Tester, and who've come out to say they don't want to. They're not for an assault weapons ban, and I highly doubt that even some of the ones you might be able to pull over to the yes side would actually want to take that vote 2 months before an election. But you never know. The other problem with the Democrats in the Senate taking the vote is because you're likely to see Democrats vote against it, it sort of undermines the message here, which is that Republicans, it's kind of already undermined a bit, but the message is that Republicans are blocking this from becoming law. And so if you go to a vote in the Senate and it's Democrats who keep it from getting to 50 votes, well, it kind of undercuts the message. Although it needed Republicans to pass the House anyway. It only got 2. There's an obvious party breakdown here. 215 Democrats and 2 Republicans supported it. So it's not exactly a shining example of bipartisanship, but they couldn't have passed it without those Republicans.
Yeah, it's still technically bipartisan. So the idea, I know what you mean. The narrative is unclear. And I guess this leads into what I think is one of the many interesting things about this. What do you think is the motivation here for the Democratic caucus?
Well, I think it's certainly a messaging bill. This is part of their message going into the midterms. They understand what they're up against. The economy is doing very poorly. We've now entered into a recession after 2 quarters of negative growth.
Have we?
Right. And there's what most people would consider a recession, at least. We've got inflation at all-time, at the 40-year highs, and you've got all these problems with the economy. And people are very unhappy. Gas prices are through the roof. There's all these other issues that are kind of at the top of people's minds. And you can see this when you look at polling on issue importance. Guns is up a little bit from where it usually is. Usually it hovers around 1% to 3% of people consider guns the most important issue. It's the most recent polling I've seen had it at 4%. Of course, in that poll, we wrote about this at the Reload. The president's approval rating on guns is dismal, just like it is on basically everything. So the idea that making gun control a big part of your push for the midterm elections is questionable at best, I think, in this environment. And then using this particular policy is even more of a stretch, I think. The thing is, they have already passed successfully a gun control bill this session. It's the first restrictions on who can own firearms in the last several decades. And they got that through on a bipartisan basis, and the president signed it. So they had, an accomplishment. They had a win. And now they're which was a pretty good win for moderates too, because, as significant as it wasn't, an expansive ban on guns like this bill is. And this bill is not that popular anymore. This policy is polling below 50% now. It's at all-time lows in the Quinnipiac poll. And even in Morning Consult's polling, which still has support a bit higher than Gallup and Quinnipiac, you're still seeing no sizable increase after Uvalde, and it's still down several points from its high point back in 2019. So as they're doing this for the first time, the policy that they're pushing is losing popularity.
It's a very interesting. I admit, I've covered politics for a while. It's hard for me to get my head around this one. I mean, they had a win. They looked kind of statesmanlike for all the reasons that you explained with the previous gun control bill. It was something substantive that got passed. And now you shoot for the moon on this, and it's pretty, it's a long shot to even get taken up in the Senate. Is this a case of the progressives running the show? Like, is there an activist? Is there just a real activist energy around this particular policy that Pelosi just felt like she couldn't resist?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, look, this has been a marquee policy for liberal Democrats for decades. This has been the thing that they talk. There's two policies that they talk about: universal background checks and an assault weapons ban. And by the way, just to give everyone a little bit of background on what exactly this bill does, because assault weapons is a nebulous term, right? It means something different in each state where there's an assault weapons ban implemented. This bill would use the 94 definitions or something very close to them. So a center fire rifle that accepts detachable magazines and has certain features, including, pistol grip, barrel shroud. They even kept in some of these 90s features that no guns really have anymore. The bayonet lug, flash suppressors, adjustable stocks. Those sorts of things are what makes something that's the same caliber, same size rifle, same length of barrel. It makes one regular gun, I guess, a regular rifle, and the other one an assault weapon. That's banned. Now this one, the 94 ban, you could have one of those features you could have on your rifle and it still would be fine. This ban goes further and makes it so you can't have any of those features. So it's much more expansive in practice than the old ban, but it's very similar in terms of definition. It also affects some semi-automatic shotguns and some handguns too. The handguns by weight, where they're trying to go after like the AR and AK pistols, because your gun can't, your handgun can't weigh too much, or else it becomes an assault weapon. And then they add some stuff like pistol braces, which again is kind of redundant because of the weight thing. Like the whole point of the weight requirement is that they don't want AR pistols and AK pistols to be allowed under this law. And so AR pistols and AK pistols are what you put pistol braces on, but so they've also made it redundant and banned those as well. They also clearly have no idea. The bill's sponsor, Cicilline, Rep. Cicilline, has no idea what a pistol brace is. We learned in the hearing on this bill, because he thought that it is the same thing as a bump stock, and that a pistol brace will make your gun a machine gun, which is just it's completely absurd. But anyway, regardless of all that's what the bill does. And I think it's important to be clear on this. You see major outlets struggling to describe these things because it is nebulous. I mean, the Associated Press, bless their heart, they've tried to improve their reporting. They put out an update to their style guide that said, avoid these terms like assault weapon, assault rifle, military style rifle, because they're nebulous, they're politically charged. And so when they reported on this, they tried to substitute assault weapon with semi-automatic guns. But the problem there is this assault weapons ban targets a specific subset of semi-automatic guns.
It's not all semi-automatic guns.
Outlaw all of them. And so that becomes misleading. They later changed it to certain semi-automatic guns, which is accurate, which is a much better way of describing it. I just, for us, we try to do, I use assault weapons in quotes and then try to explain what the heck
any
it means in
particular
this
bill.
context.
Exactly.
Yeah, and like examples of the specific, like they're targeting AR-15s and AK-47s.
Yeah.
That's what they want to go after. That because they view those as particularly dangerous, and those they show up in high-profile examples of mass shootings, of course, including Uvalde, and so that's the motivation behind these bans. But they, of course, go well beyond the AR-15 and the AK-47 to lots of other kinds of guns as well. And so it's important to try and explain that to people so they can understand what the heck is going on. But yeah, so this bill, it made it through the House. I mean, they're going to run on this bill, some of them, and it will be interesting to see how that works out. To me, and we'll have more on this over at the Reload probably for members soon. They'll write about this for the members newsletter this week. But I mean, the only people this helps in theory are the ones living, the ones in districts where they need a lot of activist support they want to fire up the liberal activists in the area, the gun control activists. And so this is, passing all those other stuff wasn't enough for most of those activists. Even this bill, David Hogg was like protesting this exact bill during the hearing on it for some reason. It wasn't very clear to me, but he celebrated the passage of it in the House. But the problem, I think the ultimate problem with that strategy is like, it's still not much of an accomplishment because it's not going to become law. So you pass it in the House, but Democrats are going to block it in the Senate, whether it comes up for a vote or not. So I don't know. I mean, I guess in your individual race as an individual House member in like a Biden +7 district, maybe that has some sway with the activists there. But, it's one of these things where it's like the gun groups also on each side have become so they've become so captured by partisan politics that like, what is Giffords and Everytown going to do if you don't pass this bill anyway? They're still going to give you millions of dollars. They still want you in office because they don't want your opponent. So, the only thing you're pushing for now is hopefully that this impacts grassroots enthusiasm, which, I mean, will it? I guess that's the open question. I don't see a good case.
Yeah, if I put on my pundit hat, it seems like Democrats right now are panicked about enthusiasm. And they're just like, what's the classic Democratic issue? The assault weapons ban, like you said, it's a marquee policy. It's not as popular as universal background checks, though, right? Where is it polling right now?
No, it's not even close. It's polling at 49% to like 45. So, and the other thing about it is, and this has been the old cliche, but I think the enthusiasm gap benefits the pro-gun side. It's just, I just think that a lot more people are going to be motivated to come out and vote against somebody who voted for this bill. And that's going to hurt those swing district Democrats a lot more than it's going to help any D+7, D+10 Democrat in practice. But I guess the thing is like, those guys are probably already, they're lost anyway.
Yeah.
Just because of the atmosphere that they're running in. So
I don't know.
It might not have much of an impact at all, to be honest with you.
I don't know about you, Stephen, but I feel weird every time I say that I know more about a political party's interests than they do. It's a very presumptuous thing to say, but I can't escape the conclusion that this is just stupid. This is just politically dumb. They're at a critical juncture before the midterms. I think they're doing something that, for some weird combination of reasons, they've convinced themselves is going to help them, and I don't think it is. I think it's just a blunder. I hate to be so simplistic in my thinking, but I can't find an angle where this makes sense to me. And you were talking on Twitter about how you felt like it wasn't going to happen because it didn't make sense and people pushed back on you and stuff. And I think there's just the common sense political reasoning to me is very clear that this is not something that's going to help them.
Yeah, I don't see it working out well. I don't think it's going to forestall this, this coming red wave that you're going to see in the House. I mean, that's just, I don't know that anything's going to. They're trying to use wedge issues, abortion and guns, classic play, I guess, but they're focusing. One of the problems they had is that they already passed all the other gun control bills. They already did a ton on guns before this, so this was the last big thing, and I just don't know how it's going to help in reality. And now, look, there's another aspect to it of like they know they're going to lose the House, and who knows when they'll get it back again. So maybe it's a last hurrah kind of thing. I'm sure that many of them genuinely believe in this policy and think it will help with mass shootings. And so you can't completely disregard that, as much as we all know how politics really works. But I'm sure there's some part of this is like they really believe in this policy. They really don't think people should be allowed to own these guns. And their beliefs match their rhetoric to at least some degree. And so this was the last chance to do this bill for probably a long time. And, to Pelosi's credit, she got it done. It didn't seem possible, but she walked the razor's edge here to get this exactly the number of votes it needed to pass, +1. So, like, I always said, I didn't think the timing made a lot of sense the way they were doing this, but I always said that if it got to a vote, it would probably pass, and it got to a vote and it passed. So we'll have to watch how the political fallout goes from here. I know one thing I know is that all these Democrats that are going to lose that probably would have lost anyway. Now the gun rights groups are certainly going to count every single one of the people who voted for this and say they lost because of it. And I don't know if that'll be true or not, but it's definitely something that you're going to see.